Greetings, brothers and sisters. Tonight is January 21st, 2025. We are commencing session 13 of our officers training program for this year. I am Brother John Hargrove, serve as president for Division 421, the Dr. Julius Nyeri CBPM division here in Atlanta. And as I said, session 13 will be looking at questions from lesson 11 titled Man. That'll be majority of our focus, and then we'll do the reading for lesson 12 titled Purpose of Institutions. As always, we must honor our rituals. If everyone would, please come off mute, put your black fists in the air, and repeat after me. We will do a pledge to the UNIA flag. Okay, now put your fist in there. All right. Please repeat after me, and we'll do them as phrases, not as the lines, but stick with me. Commit my body, mind, and spirit to the protection, defense, and security of the red, black, and green.
I commit my body, mind, and spirit to the protection, defense, and security of the red, black, and green.
I dedicate my life to the redemption of Mother Africa and the liberation of her scattered black children.
I dedicate my life to the redemption of Mother Africa and the liberation of her scattered black children.
I accept for myself and my descendants the teachings of universal African nationalism.
And I accept for myself and my descendants the teachings of universal African nationalism.
And I promise that our children will be instilled with the purpose and knowledge of themselves as African people.
And I promise that our children will be instilled with the purpose and knowledge of themselves as African people.
In order that the cause of our struggle will neither falter nor fail.
In order that the cause of our struggle will neither falter nor fail.
Until all black people are free and united.
Until all black people are free and united.
Through one God.
Through one God.
One aim.
One
destiny.
One destiny.
Next verse. Any questions, quote that we'll be using for going into tonight's lesson comes from page 6. Mr. Garvey says the value of knowledge is to use it. Another one that we will touch on, I guess we touch on it on this lesson. But he says quote, to be forewarned is to be forearmed. But just keep that in your memory. I don't have my slide prepared with the answers to share, but we obviously will have the text to refer to. Give me 1 second to pull up the digital book in the background so I can share that when needed. Let me see, merge and fix. That. Okay, I got it. We want to get through. Let's stick to the information. Answer the questions as best we can. If there's a need for elaboration or further understanding, we can go there, but let's try to stay focused and not go on any tangents outside of tonight's lessons. And we understand that tonight is January 21st, day after MLK Day, 2 days after the official pardon by the 47th president of the United States of Mr. Garvey. So we still honor Mr. Garvey and his legacy. We can talk about the pardon and those things later, but for tonight, again, let's honor Mr. Garvey by staying focused on tonight's lesson. All right, let me turn off my camera. First question, why must man be regarded as, well, are there any questions or concerns before we get started? Always ask that. Everybody ready? Okay. First question, why was man be regarded as dangerous?
Because of his sin, which caused him to have fallen from his highest state of spiritual cleanliness to the level of a creature who acts only on his own satisfaction by the gift of free will.
Absolutely correct. How do you understand that, Sister Desiree, in your own words or understanding?
Because of the harm that man has brought upon not only himself, but also the harm that he has brought upon creation and as well his brothers and sisters and society altogether.
Very well said. Very well said, as Mr. Garvey mentioned in the beginning. um, and this lesson 11 is tied to lesson 1. Honestly, it's a further depth into lesson 1. In lesson 1, Mr. Garvey, what does Mr. Garvey said about history? What did Mr. Garvey teach us in lesson 1 in regards to history? We gotta know this. We gotta be able to bring it all together.
You must never stop learning.
Yes, you're there, but it was something specifically in regards to history. And then where I was going to go there is a particular component of history that Mr. Garvey stressed.
Read history incessantly until you master it.
Absolutely. And what's the continuation of that? Particularly,
This means your own national history, the history of the world, social history, industrial history, and the history of the different sciences, but primarily the history of man.
primarily the history of man. Thank you, Sister Ebony. So that is how this lesson 11 is connected to lesson 1. This lesson goes into what we consider the history of man. So as Sister Quet was speaking, oh shoot, this thing moved too fast. Man, because of his sin, which caused him to have fallen from his highest state of spiritual cleanliness to the level of a creature. This is the history of man. These are things that happened obviously before our time, but any religious text that you refer to, it doesn't necessarily have to be the Bible, but there will be, a story of the what we can call the fall of man, and that's evident further in as Mr. Garvey said, you must calculate for his vices and damnable evils, apt to disappoint you at any time. But the I think the word I've learned, machinations of war, how we create weapons to kill each other, and to destroy each other, but not to build each other up. So, based on the history of man, that's a very important point. We must regard him as dangerous, is what Mr. Garvey says in the very first paragraph. Any questions or comments so far?
Yeah, would that be like the same of saying like knowing the difference between your higher self and your lower self?
Uh, yeah, but I would argue that's more so lesson on Christ, where Mr. Garvey talked about that. But this is more so you're right, but not about yourself. Now, again, we talked about lessons 1 through 7 is us looking in the mirror, us reflecting on ourselves. Lessons 8 through 14, now we're going out into the community. So this is the foundation of what we must understand as we go out and interact with people and with the intentions of building, recruiting, and uplifting humanity. We must understand that there's a foundation that is embedded in humanity that is wicked based on its history.
And President John, I want to, if I may add, lower chakra, higher chakra might might more so be in 13 as well. Just want to put that out there. Vice versa.
Race first, thank you. But it ends. Well, I don't know how much. Let me see what the next question is. This might go into it. Oh, all right. Yeah, I think I just asked that next question. But the paragraph ends. He, man, is apt to disappoint you at any time. Therefore, you cannot wholly rely on him as an individual. Always try to touch him with the hope of bringing out that which is good, but be ever on your guard to experience the worst that is in him, because he is always in conflict with himself as between good and evil. So, yeah, that's, very, whatever you want to call it, higher, lower self. Mr. Garvey used the conflict that we all must deal with, the conflict that we addressed within ourselves in lessons 1 through 7. So Mr. Garvey is saying now that when we look out into the world, our brothers and sisters, many of them may not have considered the principles in lessons 1 through 7. Many of them may not consider what are good good characteristics of leadership and character. That's what I was trying to say. What is good character? How do you define good character? How do you display good character? Hygiene. The aims and objects, leadership, elocution, the example, the higher spiritual example, no matter what religion you believe. But many of our people are content, and we don't consider what Mr. Guy would call these higher ideals. So that's the foundation of this lesson. Any questions or comments so far? Some in the chat. Okay, that was just question 1, and we talked about question 2. What lesson talked about calculating for the vices of man? What words were used? And Sister Wright Ebony touched on that. Lesson 1, like calculating for the vices of man. Dr. Kuda, you got a question?
No, I just want to answer the question you're asking.
What's your answer?
My answer is it was lesson 9, diplomacy.
Absolutely.
And the word is scamp,
Absolutely.
which means a person, especially a child, who is mischievous in a likable or amusing way. The meaning of the word scamp.
Okay.
Thank you. Both of those answers are
All
correct. Scamp is more direct to the answer to that question. But again, lesson 9 is diplomacy. That's us as representatives of our society going out to, seek the best on their behalf. And in that process, we'll have to deal with representatives of other societies that are seeking the best for their society. So this lesson gives us a foundation of what to expect from these people. What to expect when we talk about a scamp. Okay, next question, number 3. Who is man always in conflict with? I guess we read this in the first.
Himself.
Himself. I see you, Dr. Kuda. I know you got it. Man is always.
Sister Quet got it. We are always in conflict with ourselves, for sure.
Yes. Very important point for me. Honestly, when you look at these lessons, especially this lesson particularly, this is the target. The antithesis or the counter to the positive target that we are trying to achieve with lesson 6 in Christ. This gives us um, the target of what we're trying to avoid. So, and okay, let me the essence of what Mr. Garvey, what I'm trying to say is, has Mr. Garvey talked about any type of oppressor or enemy or adversary in these lessons thus far?
Not that I know of, unless and it's like about us personally. Is it if it focuses on us as people.
Yes, yes, and
It's
that's
never really picked a race or a tribe. No.
absolutely, and that's my point. The general objective that we are trying to overcome can be summarized in the ignorance of man. Um, Not only our people, but other cultures. And Mr. Garvey says, due to that level of ignorance, in the beginning of the lesson, we must treat them, we must not necessarily treat them as wicked, but expect them to act and behave wickedly for their best benefit. So this is where we actually, in my mind, get into the target of, what you would, I guess if there was a prototypical enemy or adversary that we are against, it is ignorance. That's plainly explained in this lesson.
So sad that we are that ignorant, and we are selfish and we're just out for self gain. And it's evident even in families, and it's so heartbreaking and it stops us from moving forward.
Well,
But
you have one half of it, but again, it's not just our culture that displays this ignorance. It's
absolutely. As,
humanity.
as I was speaking, I was also looking at our other brothers and sisters. That it's the same thing. you know it's the same. What we do to ourselves, they do it to themselves too. But the difference, I think, is that they are at an advantage because they have all the resources. They've always dominated minerals, energy, you name it, so everything is easily accessible to them, so we don't see it so much, but it's there too
Yes,
you know but thank you for bringing that up, Brother John. Thank you.
no problem. We must continue. Again, we'll this is a recurring theme, the ignorance of man throughout this lesson, so that'll continue to come up. Question 4, examples of the wickedness of man.
Robbing, exploiting, murdering.
Robbing, exploiting, murdering. Dr. Kuda.
The Bible does give us an example of the wickedness of man. It's right there in the Bible. I think it's on page 93 of our Message to the People book.
Yeah, I think I had page 93.
But it's in the Bible. The Bible explains it clearly. So it's nothing that's just coming from us. It's there, documented in the Bible.
Let's go to the text briefly because I'm trying to find it specifically. I want to make sure I
got it, President John.
Is it on page 93?
Yeah, I got 92.
92. Oh, 92 going into 93. I see it.
Yeah.
Go ahead, brother Art.
Cain slew Abel for his success.
Mm-hmm.
Jacob robbed Esau of his birthright. And down through the ages, humans' history, man has been robbing, exploiting, and murdering man for gain.
Thank you. Thank you, brother Art. Very clear. This is not the end of man. This is not necessarily where we are today, but as Mr. Garvey says, we must start with the history. And when we look at the history of man, as Dr. Kuda said, going back to the Bible, Cain slaying his brother Abel, Jacob robbing Esau of his birthright. But his man has a history of robbing, exploiting, and murdering for gain, and that's very clear. Any questions, comments on examples of wickedness, the historical examples of wickedness in man?
That's what I said, Brother John. I said robbing, exploiting, and murdering.
Yes, you are right. I agree with you, Sister
Yeah.
Aqua. Everyone was
And, and people still do that to this day.
yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Mr. Garvey says, due to that, therefore, do not completely trust him, but watch him. And I think we get into the next questions. I'm pretty sure. Okay. Examples of wickedness of man. Question 5. Until we know man personally, what should we regard him as? I think you just kind of read that. That's different ways to answer that, but I got one. Until we know him personally, what should we regard him as? I think I'm pretty sure. Anybody?
Is it vile? I don't know.
Vile? That's it. I think it's synonymous with that. Let me see.
When he's good, try to keep him good. Although he may not always remain good.
Until we know man personally, what should we regard him as? It should be somewhere on page 93.
Okay, so 93 it says abstract creature who is vile until we know him personally.
Ah, okay. I think you got it. I think Sister Quest got it. Where's that at? Which paragraph?
Page 93 is the second chapter on 93.
Second paragraph at the end of the present. Man, therefore, is the abstract creature who is vile until we know him in person.
There you go. All right. Man, therefore, is the abstract creature who is vile until we know him personally. I mean, if you don't have the word vile, I was thinking dangerous. But at the end of the day, we're not taught to be naive. We are loving, we are humanitarian, we are charitable, we are social and friendly, but it don't say naive. So, as leaders, we must have this understanding in the back of our minds, and we must not, be caught off guard. And I think that's, I don't know if Mr. Garvey says that in this lesson, but he says to be forewarned is to be forearmed. So if we know the expectations and we still allow something to happen, we got to look at ourselves a little bit. But vile creature, dangerous creature, wicked creature, anything that you would want to stay away from until you get to know him personally. You don't want to just be allowing anybody to ride in your car. I think that's the best way I can think of it.
It goes on to say, President, too, if I may mention, like you just said something when he says about judgment, just go on to say no, he is vile, and only when you know him sufficiently, you may trust him as far as your judgment would dictate.
Yes, yes. Yep. So yeah, let's just not be naive. Let's really get to know one another. That way we can really trust one another. You can't have superficial trust. It's got to be real. All right, we will proceed until we know a man personally. In dealing with man, what should you trust?
You have to trust your own character and your own judgment. And I think that goes on with having that discernment. Trust your own judgment and your own character.
Absolutely. So this is again, um, you are your best defense. Therefore, in dealing with man, trust your own character and your own judgment more than depending absolutely on his. For most of the time, his advice to you is wrong and calculatingly so. That's to put you at a disadvantage. But at the end of the day, we'll talk about this in self-reliant, self-initiative. We are responsible for ourselves, and I think we talked about it in one of the earlier lessons. But we're responsible for our own souls, and in defending ourselves, we are responsible for ourselves. So, everyone clear so far?
Well, I have a question. All right, so say that you're around someone and okay, sometimes they're good and
Mm,
sometimes they're bad.
mm.
And it's really not like a gray area. Sometimes they're good and sometimes they're bad. What do you do in a situation like that?
I would say you're taking a risk. That's what I would say personally. But it may be a calculated risk, but if they have the propensity to be wicked, um, yeah, I would say you're taking a risk by being in that person's presence. We all, again, I mean, we all fall short, but it should be a continuous strive to do better. If we're continuously falling back into the same, things that we've said that we were going to do better on, um, at that point, we can't, you can't blame the person. You got to blame yourself. I hope that helps.
Ashe, yes, you're correct. Yeah, taking
Yeah.
a risk. I can feel that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but because like as Mr. Garvey says, like the only thing you can trust at the end of the day is yourself. And even, come on now, even ourselves, we're not always consistent. We're apt, depending on emotions or time of day, or we apt to go off on people sometimes. So if how can we expect more from someone else? So trust ourselves. Be conscious, be diligent, be self-aware, and be aware of your surroundings. And Mr. Garvey already said in lesson one about our peer groups and making sure that we are conscious of the people that we are either going around or bringing around us. So this is a consistent this is a consistent theme.
And if I may add, President Hargrove, trusting yourself is trusting the other person because and that's where
Mm.
God speaks to you. So you refer back to
Yeah.
Christ, Christ, knowing the God, or whichever way that you serve. But it starts within you. So if you hear the answers within yourself, then you'll be able to make better judgment about the next person to assess. Race
Mhm.
first.
Race first, absolutely. So yeah, trust yourself, trust that connection we have with the Most High, with our Creator. But that's our primary guide, not what anyone else says or recommends. As Mr. Garvey says, the history of man is vile, and I think I'm. Oh shoot, yeah. Number seven. What has the history shown man to be? I think this is where I was thinking. But these words are interchangeable. Vile, this word. What has history shown man to be?
The history of the world shows that man has been the chief murderer or
Ooh.
killer. He has killed more creatures He has killed more creatures than any other being. He plans his murders, which he may execute on individuals on a large group of men, and he generally does this for profit,
Mm.
national profit, racial profit, political profit, or economic profit.
Hmm.
Race first.
Race first. You killed that one, Sister Ebony. Any questions on that? History of the world has shown man to be the chief murderer or killer. I know we're getting a little bit repetitive, and it sounds like there's no hope for man, but we're just reading the lesson. And in Mr. Garvey, we have to understand. we have to be aware and recognize that Mr. Garvey was being repetitive with certain concepts. And in his definition of how he described the history of man. We've talked about vile, we've talked about wicked. I know he uses dangerous somewhere in here, but now he's being just straight out, man is the chief murderer killer. And he even gives examples as to that. So again, I don't, it's not for us to be negative, but we must, be aware of Mr. Garvey's repetition and consider, why he chose to be repetitive in this way. So, any questions on history of the world? All right. Next question. I'm trying to move this thing because I think the answer is right there. No, okay. What two things should coincide before you trust a man? What two things should coincide? Now we're moving, beyond. They're just vile, they're murderers, they're wicked, but we're starting to develop that level of trust. But how do we develop that level of trust with man?
Like contemplate a state of mind. Contemplate that he would calmly, cool, and collectly invent it. Oh no, wrong one. Sorry. Never mind.
Two things that must coincide. I think it's on page 97. No, 95. Yeah, it's on page 95.
It says right here where it says always always let your mission be to make man good, therefore talk to man always from the loftiest pinnacle.
No,
You
that's
make
another one. That's
oh
another.
my bad.
I don't see it. Hold on, I'm having trouble finding it myself. Oh, okay. I see forewarned is here. Uh, Give me a second. All right, we're gonna find it together. If not, but I know the answer is uh, his his uh, his words and his actions must coincide. That's how we develop trust. When we say we're going to do something, then we do it. Continuing from Sister Ra Ebony, political profit, economic profit. He is so vile. Next paragraph says he is so vile that he no longer depends upon his physical strength to execute his vileness or to defend himself. So this is in 1937. Mr. Garvey's talking about the technology of war. Just imagine, if Mr. Garvey was able to see, nuclear bomb, nerve gas, those type of things. But I think some of that may have been maybe nerve gas was used back then. He manufactures the most deadly weapons to do the deed quickly while seeking self-protection from a similar attack. I think that speaks directly to nuclear weapons. Um, in my opinion. Therefore, contemplate the state of his mind, contemplate the state of mind of man. Contemplate that he would calmly, coolly, and collectively invent an instrument or chemical purposely designed to kill his fellows at a point where they may not harm him to gain the property and possession of his fellows. So, killing to take their possessions. Can anything be more diabolical? No other animal thinks to this low murderous level. Hence, man must be stripped of his veneer to see the evil machinations of his mind. So veneer is the outer exterior. So strip away that outer exterior and see the evil machinations of man's mind. The mind that makes TNT, high explosives. The mind that makes mustard gas. Yeah. The mind that invents the Krupp gun. I think that may have been like predecessor to the machine gun. Winchester rifle, fast proof caliber pistol, poisons calculated to kill his brother. Do you want anything more wicked? Now you can realize how bad man is. So He's really stressing this history of man. If you do, then always be on guard because you know not when the evil genius cometh. To be forewarned is to be forearmed. So that's one of the sentiments of this lesson. To be forewarned is to be forearmed. We can't go out and say, "Oh my goodness, you're not gonna believe what these people did." No, I can definitely believe what those people did. You only had to say nothing. To be forewarned is to be forearmed. Therefore, know your man, so that even though he comes with a smile, find out what is behind the smile. It is only a foolish man who accepts another at his word without finding out something about him. So now we're getting into developing that trust. Again, Mr. Garvey saying, don't be naive. You know, just because somebody got a smile and saying they're going to do nice things, um, we can't fall for that. We must know the history of man. Never fall in love at first sight and marry at first opportunity. So Mr. Garvey's getting in love here. Hold on. If you pry, where does he? All right. What was? Hold on. See now I'm losing
There are more. There are more. Ha- there. Hold on.
marriage and stuff.
There are more unhappy relations between man than happy relations, simply because the evil mind of man cannot keep good always. It is generally evil. This gives you sufficient evidence that man is vile and only in remote instances good. If you know it, then why take the chance of always believing before seeing?
Oh, I see the problem. Okay. Um, on this version, I don't have the right page. It's on page 95. Look for the word coincide. But I'm pulling up my PDF. Let me get the full version. It should be, yeah, page 95. It's to the people PDF.
Okay, here we go. Never promise anything at first sight request until you know the person is worth the promise. If you prize your own good fortune, never pledge it on the first approach of any man, but follow him, investigate him, and when his conduct coincides with what he states and
There it
what
is.
he promises, you may take the chance of trusting him just so far.
There it is. So when his conduct coincides with what's the statement? Conduct coincide with. I'm not there yet.
When his conduct coincides with what he states and
Good.
what he promises, you may take the chance of trusting him just so far.
Okay. So when you see that their behavior matches, I feel like, oh, this is, yeah, this I did have this page. Uh, yeah, we were right there. If you prize your own good fortune, never pledge it on the first approach of man, as Rodney said, but follow him, investigate him, and when his conduct coincides with what he states and what he promises. So we must be very clear. Trust is developed, according to Mr. Garvey, through keeping your word. Any questions?
I don't have a question, but I do want to make a comment. Animals, I mean, I understand that this was, in the 1920s, 1930s. So, technology and information has advanced. So we have learned that animals are just as vile, knowing that lions, when they want to take over another lion's wife or the lioness or whatever, that he kills the other lion
Mhm.
and the cubs, and then he tries to mate with the lady lion after he just did all that. So it happens in nature as well. It proves that polygamy isn't real either. So, but that's a whole nother stuff. But just to go off that race first.
Race first. Thanks, Sister Ivory. I understand what you're saying. We want to get back to, because we only got through one slide. What two things must coincide? We still got two more slides. In regards to man, what is our mission and how do we accomplish it? So, we're talking solutions now. We went over the problem in depth, the expectation in depth. So in regards to man, what is our mission and how do we accomplish that mission? So again, this is where I was talking about our goals. What are we fighting against? Y'all tired?
No, again, we fighting against ourselves. Let me ask you a question about that love at first sight. But that love at first sight, that would be like the same thing of like lusting after someone as well, wouldn't it be?
You can,
Because that's lusting after someone, that doesn't have any sacredness at all.
yeah, I mean, we're getting into semantics, whether we call it lust, but Mr. Garvey is basically saying don't fall head over heels from physical appearance or what someone the relationship with someone may give you, whether socially or politically. Look at the character of the individual. Look at I forgot the words, demeanor, but he also talked about well, there's a lot of things that he talks about, but don't just fall in love for the physical. Must be some mental, not alliance, alignment as well. But we're not, you know, not really going there right now. I'm looking for. This is our overall mission. This is very important.
It says that let your mission always let your mission be to make man good. Therefore, talk to man always from the loftiest pinnacle.
Hmm.
You may convert somebody. You may turn a vile man good. And if you succeed in doing this, in even one instance, you have accomplished a great work. Race first.
Right. First, very important point. Um, we've talked about in regards to mission. The only time I remember this word being used was in relation to Christ. We talked about Christ's special mission, Christ's mission being to take on the form of man and to show man how to ascend spiritually back to our rightful place. In short, Mr. Garvey is here giving us a mission. Let your mission be to make man good. So after we did all of that foundation of what to expect from man, we have an obligation to make man good. We know that it's bad. We know it's terrible. But who's gonna make the situation better? And we are taking on that responsibility. And how do we do that? Mr. Garvey says, therefore, talk to men always from the loftiest pinnacle. What is that? Where's our foundation where will we go for a foundation of talking to man from the loftiest pinnacle thus far in the lessons?
You got to meet people where they are.
Well, yes, but from the lessons that we've been given, and this is somewhat of a trick question, but from the lessons we've gone over thus far, how would we accomplish our mission of talking to man from the loftiest pinnacle?
It talks
By
about
knowing
expressing
ourselves.
himself.
One
Yeah.
at a time, one at a time.
He
What's the
talks about expressing himself. He talks about the expressions of people, learning to express yourself, or while watching the expressions of people, and then kind of like responding to how if you respond, because he talks about in leadership how you have to like whisper to certain people, and if they're not responsive in a certain way, that you don't say anything to them at all. So it's just about how the person is, because if he's receptive to it, then you can have a conversation, but if he's
Mm,
not, then you have to give it some time. And then the God talks about coming about around later or at a later time where you can talk to him at an easier tone, but it's about expression.
yes, yes, that's true. Anyone else? This is a like I said, it's a trick question, but
I
what?
was saying like also by knowing yourself, right?
Mm,
Because even when you're out there talking to people, you can see examples of maybe how you were when you were conducting yourself in that type of behavior.
mhm.
So again, that goes back to knowing your character again.
Yes, both are correct. For the sake of time, we must proceed. Answer would be any of these lessons can be discussed from the loftiest of pinnacles. Intelligence, education, universal knowledge, and how to get it. That speaks for itself. As Ryabini said, uh, read history incessantly, particularly history of man. Speaking on history of your race, history of your people. That is speaking to man from a lofty pinnacle. Leadership, speaking on the leadership of our race, the characteristics of leaderships that our people may embody. They may not even see that. Hey man, you always, every time I see you, you always sharp, you always on time, you always clean. Mr. Garvey talks about that as characteristics of leadership in his officers training. And, that starts the discussion. But these lofty pinnacles, obviously the aims and objects, which we should know. Universal confraternity, spirit of pride and love, reclaim the fallen, assist the needy, assist the tribes of Africa, assist the independent nations, independent Negro nations, ambassadors and embassies, conscientious spiritual worship, independent schools, institutions for our racial education, global economy. Doing all things for the benefit of our people. And that's just the first three lessons. So when we really get into the depth of the understanding, that's where we can go into the loftiest of pinnacles. We hadn't even touched on lesson 13. We'll touch on that next session. But lesson 13 is titled The Universe. And that's where Mr. Garvey really challenges us to expand our imaginations. But again, just pointing out, and it's kind of fun. But this is the reality of what we're trying to do. And that's why this lesson is so important. That's why we're going to take our time with this lesson, because this is the objective, to go out and to uplift humanity, starting with our people. That's the best way I can say it. Okay, we must proceed. So that is very important, and that's what we're trying to do. We know the history, we know what to expect, but we also know what we must be doing. We must go out and we must encourage and speak to our people from the loftiest of pinnacles, and encourage them to strive for that high, what we consider a high spiritual state. And an intellectual state as well. I think Mr. Garvey would argue. What is the present system of education calculated for? So this gets into the cause of why man is the way that it is, and some of the obstacles that we must overcome as we're speaking to our people from the loftiest of pinnacles. What is the present system of education calculated for?
Says the present system of education is calculated to subjugate the majority and elevate the minority.
Absolutely. Present system of education is calculated to subjugate the majority and elevate the minority. Everybody clear on that? This goes into, well, we're not going, let me see, I'm not going to do too much. Let me see. But when you think about how a global minority population, and this is Mr. Garvey in 1937, he knew this, that the population of other nations, we're not going to get into anybody in particular, but the population of other nations were small compared to the population of Africans. But when you bring it all together, we know, we can talk about the Caucasians, the Jewish culture. This small group of a particular group has become the top class. And you got to think, how does that happen? How does the minority become the top class? And as we learned in some of the very early lessons, I don't expect y'all to remember this, but Mr. Garvey said, how did the white society maintain its supremacy? Does anybody remember that? Give me a second. Well, I'm not gonna find it in the book, but I'll find it later. But he says that through lies, through the repetition of lies, and that is kind of where we're going. That is what we should understand. Mr. Garvey is communicating in regards to the foundation for education. It was created by a small group, a minority, in order to maintain power over the majority. Any questions? Okay. What is the benefit of being a part of a fraternity, according to Mr. Garvey? What does he say is the benefit of being a part of a fraternity?
He says that as for instance, a Negro attends a university with other students of the race. I was trying to get to that part. While the Negro would have the educational system, while the Negro would have the privilege of the classroom for general instructions to learn calmly, he might not have the privilege of his fellow his fellow students to admit to certain club fraternities. Such fraternities generally enjoy the privilege of special instructions and special discussions, which convey a wider range of enlightenment on the subjects taught than would be possible to the Negro. Hence, when he graduates, even from the same textbooks, his technical knowledge is not as wide as that of others who have had fuller explanation in the technical interpretation of the particular textbooks, and at the same time is only trained to reflect the system that props the intentions of the creators of the system, so that is at his best he who is making use of his education is a slave to a system that was not intended for him, but to which he renders service.
Yes. Thank you, Sister Abney. What was Mr. Garvey in regards to the fraternities? What is Mr. Garvey saying is the benefit of a fraternity?
He was saying that you can learn more, like get more explained than you would in a classroom. It'd be like more of an extension of the explanation of what they was talking about.
And how does anyone remember when we talked about how Jewish culture has additional education? Okay. These two relate. Mr. Garvey said in the earlier chapter that he compared the Jew and the Gentile, basically a Jew, and we can picture that in the United States, a Jewish child in public school, and then a normal American child in public school. They will both get the same public school education, but the Jewish child will get an additional education outside of public school. So when you compound that 18 years, the Jewish child is basically, he's going to have a much further depth of understanding than the American or Gentile used in that sense. Mr. Garvey is repeating that in regards to colleges and saying being a part of fraternities allows you a deeper level of technical education, I think is the word he used. Or wait, they have the same textbooks. His technical knowledge is not as wide as that of others who have fuller explanations in the technical interpretation of the particular textbook at that time. So we'll get the same education, we'll attend the same classes, but those secondary study groups we will not be admitted to. So the education will be different, and that is, yeah, that the education will be different. Um, Everybody clear on that? In the next lesson, purpose of institutions, we will talk about the creation or the need for our fraternities and societies of special education. As we, and as our children go into public schools, we should also have a secondary form of education that is particular to our race, and particular to the benefit of our race. Because again, when you look at, as Mr. Garvey said, how the conditions of the world are what they are is based on education. And what have we been getting educated, and who has been educating us? So it's not always about, necessarily going in and challenging, oh, y'all shouldn't be teaching this and you should be teaching this, which there is an argument there, but you don't necessarily see, and I had to have a discussion with a brother recently, but you don't see the Jewish culture, arguing and fighting to have Jewish culture taught in public schools. They take care of their own private education themselves. So that's responsibility that we have. Any questions or comments so far? But we must consider the additional benefit of being a part of these groups, such as fraternities. That's the point that Mr. Garvey's trying to make. Next question: what is the best way to educate or re-educate the Negro after he has been indoctrinated by the current education system? Sharing the right thing. Yeah. What is the best way to educate or re-educate the Negro after he has been indoctrinated in the current system of education?
It says, rob you of wages. Trust only yourself and those who you know, and those who look like you. Those who look like you are related to you and ought to be known first before others. Oh, there may be good grounds for a common education of all groups in the community, such as civic education, political and social education. But this detailed education that teaches man how to live to the highest and enjoy the best is particular education. And that particular education is reserved for those who want to gain advantage. Is that it?
No,
Hmm.
that's not. That's you going into another one. Let me make sure I got this right.
Educate him racially at home.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking for. Where is that at? Y'all don't have the page up here.
Second paragraph on 97.
Second paragraph, 97. 1 second. Let's jump over to the book. Second paragraph, page 97. Everybody again should have the text. We all have digital copies. You should also have a physical copy. I'm not gonna get into that too much. Second paragraph, that's what I thought. That's what I thought it was. Therefore, it is necessary for the Negro to be additionally educated or re-educated after he has imbibed the present system of education. Let me stop there. Are we clear on that? Mr. Garvey says that this is a requirement.
President, may I ask a question, please, on this? Because this is something that I'm dealing with currently. So, okay, okay, just say we have people who are running institutions that don't want to be funded by the government, correct? Now, the thing is, it says, therefore, it's necessary for the Negro to be additionally educated or re-educated after it has been imbibed by the present system of education. So, my question is, what would be the harm? I'm asking, what would be the harm? Let's say, for instance, for me, I want to get grant money for my nonprofit and my national nonprofit, correct? So if I want to get money for my nonprofit by the government, it's bylaws that I have to abide by in certain things, correct? But what is the problem of still informing my people or my participants in what the government want them to do, as well as implying or embedding the history of, or the education or the curriculum that they need to know too. You see what I'm saying? Why do our people have to be pushed from getting what we deserve from the government? For whatever it is the government gives, we should be able to receive because it's rightfully ours anyway, however it is given. That we get them, they say that we need to know this. We should know what the government wants us to know, because this is what their tactics, as well as imply our own teachings into this government. I mean, to the funding, to this institution that we built. We just received the funding from what I'm saying. Just receiving what they telling us to do. They receive the funds to keep it going. But what is the problem of implying both statutes when trying to build? If you can answer that question real quick. I'm sorry for
Yes.
taking so long.
Well, you said.
Can I say something to that?
So 1 second. This is a direct question. I want to make sure I answer this. You said, see, you messing me up. You said getting the
From funding, like we say,
you said
our thing is,
exempt.
yeah, right, not getting funding from the government. But what is the problem with us receiving funding from the government and learning what they want us to learn, and still teaching what we supposed to learn as indigenous people? My question is like, what's the problem with that? Why shouldn't we do that? Or why shouldn't that? Why isn't that implied when we're building and striving for ourselves?
In essence, I don't disagree with what you're saying, but the focus that we must have is as the funds are transferred to us, what is the program or what is the focus of the program that we are trying to impart on the community? Are we just going to do a duplicate of the same information that they get in public school? George Washington was the first president. Abraham Lincoln was the 16th president. And then mix that in with, Harriet Tubman or Frederick Douglass, something like that. Um, I I would challenge that approach, and I would argue again, we have to understand what is the focus. What are we trying to achieve? And if the first thing that we are saying here, therefore, is necessary for the Negro, and additionally educate or re-educate after he has imbibed the present system of education, that's why I stopped there. This implies that, and we just went through all of this, the current system of education is not designed for our benefit. So for us
But
to
the funding is. So my question is, to receive the funding, we could say yes. I will tell them this is what you said, but I can reinstate and say, but this is the truth, y'all. You see what I'm saying? So I will say on the test, they're gonna ask you, you see what I'm saying? We teach them what they want us to teach them, but we still imply the truth behind it. Kind of exactly what he's saying. This is how we win in the community. This is what I just want. I speak on this in the Black Cross Nurses. I send that information out to you, but into this right here, we are we are cutting ourselves short because we are not receiving what these people are putting out. They're putting pieces of the game out there. So all we have to do and just do it in our own way. But we'll talk about that. But race first, president. Thank you.
race first, we're not saying that, and we've talked about this. Mr. Garvey does encourage us to utilize the benefits of citizenship. Our ancestors did work, fight, and die for these rights of citizenship. So for us to ignore them or not utilize them when they could be used for our benefit, we don't think that that is wise. But again, we just want to stay with the text. So I'm not necessarily giving an opinion on what should be done. I'm just emphasizing what Mr. Garvey is stating. And I only emphasize this first part. And I want to know if we have an agreement there. Do we agree that it's necessary for the Negro to be additionally educated or re-educated after we have gone through the present system of education?
Yes, of course. But like the sister was saying, when you especially with nonprofit or for profit, that's why it's best to go for profit, even with grants and getting money. I think Marcus Garvey talked about that in economy. There's still a curriculum that has to be followed. So when you get the grant money, it doesn't just stop right there, because they come back and they actually come and observe to see everything that's going when it comes to the nonprofit versus the for-profit. That's why it's imperative for us to, have our own. But if you look at the grants, because I know a lot of organizations, they do get the grants. Look at, even if you apply for it, look at everything you have to do, right? And even to continue, because that grant is only good for that year. Now you have to go back and renew. And when you go back and renew, they, in between time, they're gonna watch you. So one of the things that, because even if the university is HBCUs, they turn around, they get grants and everything else, and they have to do a certain curriculum. So one of my professors, what he would do, he would have a separate day off the campus, out of the school system, in order to turn around, and he would have a day that we would meet. Sometimes we would meet in the park or whatever, and we did go through a re-education, right? So you have the grant here that you have to follow the curriculum, because when you apply for a grant, if you look at it, all them stipulations that you have to do in order for you to even renew that grant for the next year, and then they can turn around and take that back because you didn't follow in this, in the stipulations of the grant. So again, that's the difference between for-profit and nonprofit when you applying for grants. But yeah, there's stipulations on everything. That's why it's always best for us to have our own.
I understand. I think we're getting a little off track. First, we made a consensus that it is necessary for our people to be re-educated after we've gone through the present system of education. And how do we think we should go about doing that?
We have to go outside of that, pick a time where we can do something collective that is between us, the ones that is willing to go into that educational program. We have to do a totally different platform altogether for re-education.
Thank you, Sister Quet. Anyone else have any recommendations on what we should do?
According to the text, is to second what Sister Quest said, the best way to do this is to educate him racially in the home, meeting hall, or his own club, where he will be put under the closet scrutiny
Closest scrutiny.
closest, I said closet, closest scrutiny and analysts and analysis of what appears to be education as coming from other people, because their system of education may not completely fit into the Negro's idea of his own preservation.
Okay. My only question to all proposals is in regards to that last part. What will be the group that puts the curriculum under a level of scrutiny, to say that, yes, this is good and appropriate, for the community? That's again, that's Garveyism, because Garveyism is saying that we must be that body, that we create to say what is fit, for our community. And that's, in essence, no matter how we want to articulate it, that is how it must be executed, according to Mr. Garvey.
And with these, I just want to add this, and we can continue. But with these institutions that we, even if we was to get something from the government, get a grant, or we get, for profit, non-profit, however we do this, and we get our institutions going, they have to be protected and guided by the UNIA Constitution and bylaws and stuff like that. Because even in the UNIA Constitution and in the course of African philosophy, we still have to abide by the rules of the land. So
Yes.
either way it goes, we still have to do what we got to do. And then if we was to do for ourselves, the money that we make still comes from the federal government, still a federal note. So I just don't understand what's the difference. It's just the mindset of how the note is given. But if we just let's just redirect the mindset and get more, and we all continue to engage into this universal African nationalism, we can understand what we can do and the power and how we can do it. So we'll get into that more into the Black Cross Nurse means. Thank you, President.
Yes. Thank you, Sister Riley. This is a very important paragraph. We spent a lot of time talking about the expectations, the history of man, and now we touched on, our mission is to uplift man and speak to him from the loftiest of pinnacles. This is furthering that how. This paragraph very important as to that how. Therefore, it is necessary for the Negro to be additionally, these important words, necessary. Mr. Garvey used that word necessary. It's necessary for us as a race to be additionally educated or re-educated after we have imbibed in the present system of education, period. This is Mr. Garvey's opinion. And the best way, this is very important too. He says the best way, this is his opinion, to do this in his time, is to educate him racially in the home. That's one thing I love about this program. Everyone should be in their home or in a meeting hall or in a club as we are having this program. But we got to bring it back. We have to take initiative, take ownership, self-reliance. And we must create these spaces and manage these spaces where he will be put under the closest scrutiny and analysis of what appears to be education. So we can't just come in and say, this is education for the community. It must be put under the closest scrutiny and analysis of what appears to be education as coming from other people. Because their system of education may not completely fit the Negro's ideas of his own preservation. So, one of the things recently, and let me see, I'm trying to think of something that's not too much of a topic. I guess the pardon, that's we're not gonna go too deep into it, but whether we should, acknowledge the pardon or how we feel about the pardon, would be our own personal education that we provide to our children rather than just taking a press release from the United States and using their words to describe what the pardon was. I think that's a great way to.
And if I can add to that, President, knowing that our education helped make that pardon happen. Knowing that our education, our continued education to know ourselves and to strive for ourselves and to do for ourselves is what makes those things happen within our community. So knowing that we are that powerful to get our great right excellent Marcus Mosiah Garvey exonerated, even in his day. Like if we could have put our forces together even earlier time, we would have made it happen early. But the times of the essence. But just knowing that it can be done, we can do more. So knowing that our mind and our knowledge of self-determination and our willpower can make us, we could really move mountains. And it's just pulling the weeds of oppression from those power structures that aren't real, and just tearing down those make-believe towers of oppression. So that's just what we're working on. Race first.
Absolutely. Okay, we'll get back to the questions. A couple things in the chat. Yes. Okay, y'all got the chat. Get back to the slides. Benefit for fraternity was the best way to educate, re-educate. Why have educated Negroes been unable to assume leadership of their race, according to Mr. Garvey? What has been the issue with educated, Dr. Kuda? I see you got your hand. Hadn't heard from you in a little bit. Why have educated Negroes been unable to assume leadership of the race?
I think according to Garvey, educated Negroes have often been unable to lead because their education was rooted in colonial and Eurocentric ideologies, and teaching them to serve the interests of others rather than their own people. Many educated Negroes have been disconnected from their roots and have not developed the courage or independence to challenge oppressive systems.
Yes, at the end of the day, in essence, it is because our leadership has been trained by our oppressors. So how can we expect, what can we expect, or how much leadership can we expect from that level of training? And I think a great example would be W.E.B. Du Bois and Mr. Garvey, where W.B. Du Bois was trained by the United States school system, the Ivy League school system of Harvard, and he went on to claim leadership and be accepted as leadership in the African race. But when you look at his tactics, when you look at the organization that he supported, which was not founded by Africans or Negroes, when you look at some of his strategies, such as integration that he promoted, talented tenth, um, a lot of his solutions could be tied back to white supremacy, capitalism, and what else could you expect from the United States American, United States education system? So I think that's a good way to remember that. What Garvey is saying, yeah, our leaders in the past have been trained by either America or Europe in some form. So, in order for us to succeed, we must be able to develop and train our own. Questions or comments? Okay.
Do you perhaps have another example, please, President John, besides W. Du Bois?
Yeah. Barack Obama. Uh, um, he's I still respect Barack Obama. I gotta acknowledge his history that he's contributed. But in hindsight, when you look at his accomplishments or what he achieved on behalf of Black people, it's not very impressive. So um, I think he would be another example of there's only so much that we can expect from leadership that is produced by this educational system. Does that help, Dr. Kuda?
Absolutely. It helps. It helps a great deal. And you chose the right example too. For now, for the times we are in now, we can relate to that one. Thank you very much.
No problem. But yeah, it's so many. There's so many. You just think you throw out a leader and a so-called leader of Americans, particularly African Americans, well, Africans, particularly African Americans, and they would probably fit in that category.
Sorry if I go too deep again, but do you think it's out of like for the current? I would understand Du Bois's time. His errors were kind of, unfortunately, it was the system at that time. But right now, in the times we are in, and it's how far we've gone, with development and coming up with all these various policies, the human rights, Declaration of Human Rights, this and that, civil rights. Why would a brother still, what would the reason be? But I think I know it. It's because maybe he's 1 in 100 and he has to go by what he's told to do. We still, even though you are in a leadership role, you still have orders being passed on to you that you need to follow. It's not like you are fully in that position, 100%, the person who will call the shots, especially if you are of color, like Obama was. Because I even recall one conference where he was asked some question and he even told them, I have to go back to Senate or something like that. I recall that very well. And I was like, oh, that's quite diplomatic of him. He didn't answer it right there. He said he can't make that decision by himself. He has to take it back to the Senate. So, but look, right now, I'm sorry to bring the current politics. I'm not a politician, but right now, the president just recently sworn in. He's clearly saying there's only two genders, male and female. Okay, I don't want us to go into a debate, but I'm just trying to evaluate, that why would it be for such an intelligent person like Barack Obama to not advance what he needed to do for Black people.
Understand, we must distinguish what we call intelligence and education. I would argue, in my opinion, intelligence is overall understanding of our connection as humanity to the world and to the creator. And in that sense, we do what is best for humanity as a whole. Education, on the other hand, is synonymous with training. Again, we're talking about individuals that have spent 20, 30 plus years being trained in this system, whether it's undergraduate school, graduate, post grad, even PhD, masters, and even beyond that, society. So, Mr. Garvey talked about these fraternities. Some of that stuff goes beyond, a lot of that goes beyond college. So, Dr. Kuda, we can talk about that all day. But again, this lesson, the takeaway is what should we expect from these people unless they are taught something better? And who is going to teach them something better except for us? And we must start with our people.
Thank you, President John. I get it. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Kuda. All right, we got a few more questions, then we still got a reading of very important lesson 12, the purpose of institutions, but it follows up everything that we're talking about here, the issues with man, how to address these issues, the education, societies, clubs, meeting halls, those things. So last question on this side, how do we prepare for our duties and responsibilities in life? And that goes to the mission that we talked about earlier. How do we prepare for our duties and responsibilities in life? I see you, Dr. Kuda. Anyone else?
We always stay prepared.
How? Dr. Kuda, what do you got? Ooh, there, I see it.
I have 3. Self-discipline is what Garvey teaches us, and self-education. Acquiring skills and knowledge that allow us to contribute to the advancement of our communities, and developing a strong moral character rooted in cultural and spiritual awareness.
Yes, what I'm looking for is right here on page 98. I think I'm sharing I think I'm sharing this. Yeah, I am. What I'm
And
looking
continuous self-improvement.
it is the question, what was it? How do we become prepared for our duties and responsibilities in life? Well, Mr. Garvey says on the top page 98, it is by education that we become prepared for our duties and responsibilities in life. So very clear education. And again, as we talk about the difference between education and intelligence. If one is badly educated, so you can be badly educated. I don't know if you can be, badly and, have bad intelligence. Well, I guess you can, I guess bad education relates to bad intelligence. All right, we're not going. If one is badly educated, he must naturally fail in the proper assumption and practice of his duties and responsibilities. So if one is educated to be the leader of the Negro people, but he's educated in American society, in American schools, that he's been educated to fail his people. The Negro fails in the proper assumption of his duties and responsibilities because he has been badly educated. He has universally failed to measure up to his duties and responsibilities as a man and as a race. And why have we failed? His education has been subversive. So education is the source of what we must fight against when we talk about the ignorance in man. The ignorance in man is due to education, poor education. He must now take his education practical and real. Hence, he must rearrange everything that affects him and his education to be of assistance to him in reaching out to his responsibilities and duties. So there's no way around this. There must be a complete re-education. There's no way, no better way to say it. Everything that we've been taught that is for our detriment, we must find a way to make it for our benefit or throw it away. And that's from lesson 1. Okay, we have one more slide. What two? Oh, snap! This wrong. Thing.
The song says, "Education is a must."
Yes, education. So when we talk about what we need to be doing, what we should be doing, I'm gonna argue education. Our mission is to uplift man, and Mr. Garvey says that the best way to do that, or what I'm hearing Mr. Garvey say in regards to the best way to do that, is through education. And
self-education.
yes, and also self-education. We must, and that's lessons 1 through 7 again. In order to expect anything from anyone else or to change anyone else's mindset and to be able to speak to them from the lofty of pinnacles, we must first educate ourselves. So again, don't expect to master lesson 11 and run out and teach from the loftiest of pinnacles if we haven't mastered lessons 1 through 7. That's why we took so much time on that foundation. And when you look at this picture here, this is what we should have in our toolkit so far. Lesson 1, we should understand intelligence. Lesson 2, leadership. Lesson 3, aims and objects. Lesson 4, elocution. Lesson 5, God. Lesson 6, Christ. Lesson 7, character. Lesson 8, social system. Lesson 9, diplomacy. Lesson 10, economy. And now we're finishing up lesson 11, man. So we should have a grasp and an understanding of these lessons. If we don't, take some time and refresh yourselves, particularly as we've said, lessons 1 through 7. And if you have any trouble finding time or being motivated, reread the introduction, reread the foreword and the preface. Understand what this course means, why it was put together. Understand what our ancestors went through. But again, that history of man, the history of the UNIA. Somebody said something about what has been done in the past, we can do again. And it reminded me, Mr. Garvey, what man has done, man can do. And that's what we are trying to accomplish. Last 3 questions. And if somebody
Just to add, please, President
go
John,
ahead, Dr. Good.
what I do for myself, I go back to all previous recorded sessions, and it refreshes my mind, and it sticks in my head. And they are all there, the links that you sent to us. If you just go to the emails, go and click on those links and listen to the sessions over again.
Yes.
If you have missed those lessons 1 to 7, go and if maybe you have forgotten what we learned, just click on the links and go listen. Go to our YouTube channel and click and like. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kuda. Yes. And again, that brings in point, no excuses. This is the 4th year that we've done this. There are resources out there. We continue to have new people come into the program and they're able to grasp what is being discussed and what is being presented. So we know there's not an issue of how we are communicating this information. And again, we're doing much more than what has to be done per the course of African philosophy. Does anybody remember what was the original requirement of the first class of the students of African philosophy?
To write out the entire course.
Write out the entire course. So we all have access to the book, digital, whatever. If listening to recordings, from 2021, 2022 is too much, write out the book. That's what they did in 1937. We can always go back to that foundation. Everything that we're doing now is additional, and again, it lends credence to there is no excuse. I've listened to our recordings, driving in the car, sitting around, doing stuff around the house. It is a bit tedious, but again, we must remember what our ancestors did, and we must, we got to put in the work. Education is not easy. And I know that it becomes more and more easy over time and with technology. But, some of this stuff, that repetition, we just got to get back to that old school repetition. All right, last three questions. If a man will rob you of his wage of you, if a man will rob you of your wages, what else will he rob you of? If a man will rob you of of your wages, what else will he rob you of?
Your life.
What does Mr. Garvey say? It's more, before we get to that level, it's more foundational. It's basically saying if this is being done, if he's robbing you of your wages, then he's also robbing you of this. Dr. Kuda.
According to Garvey, if a man will rob you of your wages, he will also rob you of your liberty, your life, and your labor.
That's not what I'm looking for.
He will rob you of your education.
Yes. What does he mean by that, Brother Art?
It means that to he will monopolize and try to control your whole being, the way I see it.
Well,
People,
go ahead.
He will
This
try
one is deep.
to control everything that you would do to try to improve yourself. He will.
Yes, to an extent.
So what is that, like your dignity? He will rob you of your dignity.
No, it's not. It's not the dignity. It's deeper than that.
Yeah, it's your whole.
We got to understand something. What do we think the goal of?
He will rob you of your race.
No, slow down. But what is the goal of? I guess we can call it, the dominant society. What do we think the goal is?
To control the world, or
Control is the word that I'm looking for. What what would we say is the opposite of control of a people?
Being self-sufficient, self-reliant.
Yeah, more so in the majority standpoint. If it's a lot of people that you can't control.
Empowering is the opposite.
Well, no, it's we got to remember society is an organization of mankind. Opposite of society, opposite of organization would be chaos, riots. Not saying that everything in opposition leads to a riot, but the point is, one tool of maintaining control uh, is maintaining a level of contentness, and what we consider happiness. And what Mr. Garvey is saying is, if a man is going to rob you of your wages, he's also going to rob you of the education to know that he is robbing you of your wages. So he can rob you straight in your face, and you don't even have the education to question it. So and
It's
that
deep.
that
Yeah.
applies to several different aspects, from dignity. Yeah, I think dignity was the other one. Religion, but
Your existence. That's
exactly our identity, and that's why we must understand the importance of that foundation of education. Education is so much; it's pretty much everything. Education is everything.
yes.
It is what we know. It's what we praise. It's what we worship. It's what we fear. It's what we, fight against. It's all based upon what we've been educated, what we've been educated.
Thank
So,
you, President John. You explained that well. I couldn't get it out of me. Thank you.
not a problem. We'll read Mr. Garvey again. As you shouldn't expect another man to give you clothing that you need to cover your own body, so you should not expect another race to give you education to challenge their right to monopoly and mastery. So if others are ruling, we shouldn't expect them to educate us to take them out of rulership. Let's be. Come on now. We gotta. And that's, again, robbing us of our education. The fact that we haven't even thought of that is a problem. To take for yourself that which they offer, to take for yourself that which they also want for themselves. If you are going to distrust the other man and his honesty because you know him to be dishonest, then you must maintain the attitude in every respect. For he is dishonest for if he is dishonest in one, he may be dishonest in all. And that's where we get into, if there's sometimes a certain way, you can't really trust him. If he will rob you of your wages, he will also rob you of your education that will enable you to know that he is robbing you of your wages. Trust only yourself and those you know and those who look like you. Okay, we'll stop there. Okay.
That's the same thing
Wow.
that we going through right now, just dealing with the government, because even, we work and they do turn around and rob us of our wages. They practice the capitalism, when you want to go buy clothing or go shopping in the grocery store, so yeah, we're constantly getting robbed every day dealing with the United States government.
I'm with you, Sister Quet. We got two more questions, then we still got a reading of lesson 12. Lesson number 16. What is the particular education reserved for those who want to gain an advantage? What is the particular education reserved for those who want to gain an advantage?
So it goes right here. There may be good grounds for common education of all groups in the community, such as a civic education, political, and social education. But this detailed education that teaches man how to live to the highest and enjoy the best is particular education. That particular education is always reserved for those who want to gain an advantage.
So,
Therefore, there is no other way secure education has your own, such as the Jews who have outside of their common education a particular and peculiar education of their own, which arguments or adds to or modifies the common education that they have gathered in the community with others. So I guess the question is, I guess we have to have the common education, uh, civic education, political, and social education.
um, um, what Mr. Garvey is saying is we must have a particular education in addition to what we just described as the common education. So, when we were speaking earlier on educating the youth through government funded programs, if the government funded program is forcing you to repeat the same civic education, the same social and political education, um, I'm not sure that that's necessarily what I would consider a particular education for our race. So in addition to learning, here in Atlanta, Mayor's Andre Dickens, former Mayor Shirley Franklin, the 12 districts of city council. Yes, our children should know that and should have that common history. But in addition to that, there should be a detailed history that speaks to the particular needs of our community. So if we foresee a need for, STEM, engineering, science, technology, engineering, math, we as a community can develop these programs. If we as a community see that there will be a need for the literary arts, we can develop that particular education. But having that ability to have a secondary education, also a particular education, is what Mr. Garvey says is required for those that wish to gain an advantage. And again, that's something that we must strive to create for ourselves. We good on particular education?
Yes, create our own schools.
Yes. Yeah, if we desire any form of advantage, we got to get out of this mindset of we're gonna just go to the same schools as them, and then we will they will teach us how to free ourselves. No, that's nonsense. So we got to come together. We'll talk about lesson 12, establishing institutions, but particularly education. That is the fundamental solution that I see Mr. Garvey giving in this text, and particularly in this lesson. All right, last question. What is the difference between the Jew education and Gentile education? And I talked about this earlier already. So I guess it was in this lesson. What is the difference between the Jew education and the Gentile education? Yeah, you can be brief because I did mention this earlier.
The Jews have their own schools set up on the weekends where they teach their kids on the weekends.
Absolutely.
But they still allow their kids to go to the Gentile schools.
Absolutely. So what happens? Yeah. So the Jew ends up receiving the common education. Let me just read it. Bottom of page 98, Mr. Garvey says, therefore, if in no other way in particular, secure education and have your own education, such as the Jews who have outside of any common education, a particular and peculiar education of their own. So as we talked about in our homes, in our clubs, in our meeting halls, we must develop a particular education of our own, which augments or adds to or modifies the common education that they have gathered in the community with others. So as they're learning the common education, there must also be a supplemental particular education. By the fact that the Jew gets a dual education, that's what we're speaking of. It's a dual education. Some people will talk about changing the public school curriculum, and that is fine and dandy. But that doesn't stop us from developing our own secondary education. No matter what they are being taught, and we do have a right, and we should be speaking on what they're teaching our children. But besides that, we should be developing our own private educational institutions. Education of the state, education of his race. He is always in a unique, and this is the Jew. The Jew is always in a unique position to worsen or better his compatriots of another race in the community. He is always making more out of everything than a Gentile. Why is that? Because he knows all about the Gentiles. So he knows everything that you learned in your school, while the Gentiles knows nothing about him. So we got to ask, what level of education have we developed that is particular to our race that is not a common education that other cultures have acquired or can acquire. And that is the last question that I have.
Because we black and nobody else is black but us. But the thing right here is that by us being, good people like we are, because we are natural humanitarians, I don't think it should be in our objective at all to change anything in the public school system, because you have other children that are there, right? So by us having our own school, and maybe parents will say, okay, we're going to come over here, just like they have the Pan-African school in DC. We would be doing a disservice to other children, and that would be inhumane, a disservice to them, because the public school system is funded through the government, through those grants and everything else that goes in the fruition. And I think that it's only us being a humanitarian for us to have our own schools and not fight with the public school system. Just take our children out of the school system and have our own school.
I understand that's a secondary fight, but again, as you said, we are tax-paying citizens, and these resources are supposed to be for tax-paying citizens. So that's another discussion as to how we reallocate those resources. But at the end of the day, we must develop our own particular education, and that is this class is our way of doing that. We obviously will need to develop these classes for youth and for children, but at the same time, who's going to teach the children? So it starts with us. It starts with quote unquote leadership. It starts with the quote unquote parents, and the parents educating and empowering themselves such that they can impart education and guidance to the children. There were I had two Bible verses that were tied to the end of it. So I don't know where I pulled this or when I pulled those together. But again, Mr. Garvey teaches us we should read the Bible, chapter of the Bible once a day, Old and New Testament. So sometime in the process of doing that, I brought these two together, and I'll plan to be doing that more future groups. But First Peter chapter 4, verse 11 was the first one. And again, we're talking about man. I think this relates to the mission that Mr. Garvey talked about. If any man speak, let him speak as the oracles of God. So speaking from the loftiest of pinnacles. If any man minister, let him do it as of the ability which God giveth. So if you're going to speak or minister as God gave you that ability to do, that God in all things may be glorified through Jesus Christ, to whom be praise and dominion forever and ever. Again, we don't have to. This is First Peter, but it's about speaking from the loftiest of pinnacles. I remember that now. And the other one, let's see, Job 13:16. Let's see what we got. Job. He also shall be my salvation, for an hypocrite shall not come before him. Us, yeah. Obviously, we can't be hypocrites. So as we're going out to uplift individuals, and speak from the loftiest of pinnacles, we must understand and we must embody these principles ourselves. We should just be going out telling people how great the aims and objects are, but we're not following any of them. So hypocrisy, we should know that that's a no-no in the UNIA and Garveyism. Do we have a volunteer that will help us read tonight's lesson? I think I just closed.
Can I request for Sister Arquette to read for us, President?
Sure.
Thank you.
I just closed this whole thing out. Lost all my pages.
All right, Dr. Cooter. You want me to read the whole lesson 12? Good God, where is the brother at that sounds like Marcus Garvey?
You have the spirit, sister. You have the spirit. Love
That's
you.
a lot of pages.
Give me a second. I gotta.
We were taught while President John is still taking a second. Over the weekend, President first Vice President Shaka Barak taught us that we must always learn to remind one another that I love you, my sister. I love you, my brother. So I love you, Sister Kate.
I love you too, Dr.
Thank
Cooter.
you.
Yeah,
Thank
beautiful.
Love
Yes.
you all.
Love you all.
Okay. Am I sharing the right information? Yeah.
I have the book.
Okay. We just want for everybody else to be able to follow along. Give me 1 second. And everybody should have the book, as Sister Quet does. And if you don't have the book, we do have copies of the book for sale.
How much are they for sale, President John?
What's that?
How much are they for sale?
$20. We have hard copies for $20.
Will you be able to post it for me?
Yeah, communicate with me.
Okay, we'll talk.
Give me more
Thank
words.
you.
Thank you. Purpose of institutions.
Make sure he signs it to Dr. Kuda.
Sorry.
Make sure President Hargrove signs the copy he sends to you.
Thank you. Thank you.
There's value to it.
Thank you, President General Mariama. Nice to hear your voice. Love you, my brother.
Unconditional bulletproof love to you too. And everyone
Thank
else on
you.
the phone.
It's 10 o'clock, brothers and sisters.
Yes, Brother Camus.
Sister Quet, you
Troglodytes.
Yeah,
That's our inside joke.
she is a terror to troglodytes.
all right, no folly. Let's finish.
All right, you ready?
I'm ready.
Organized society is always a mass of people.
Sister Quet, could you just recap the lesson 12, purpose of institutions, then go.
Okay. Lesson 12, the purpose of institutions. Organized society is always a mass of people, and as such cannot do anything explicit or by detail by themselves. Hence, the organizing of institutions to do the particular work that cannot be done by the masses as a whole. There are different kinds of institutions in as a society, but each institution has its particular function, whether it be the church, college, or university, school, hospital, academy, chamber of commerce, fraternity, trade union, literary club, sports club, athletic club, gymnasium, YMCA or YWCA, etc. In our present civilization, no society would be considered functioning properly if such institutions did not exist. Therefore, it is necessary for the Negro to pay close attention to developing their appreciation for institutional life. It is not necessary or binding that his copies completely. It is not necessary or binding that he copies completely the systems, methods, or manners of these institutions, except in so far as they would go to help them to promote a higher life and in accomplishing the most out of this organized society. And this incumbent upon him, it is incumbent upon him that he also have and control his own institutions based upon his own cultural and civilized idealism. As for instance, he may have his own church, but it is not necessary for him to adopt the peculiar articles of faith of churches of alien races. He is not a Hebrew, therefore he would not opt the Hebrew faith. He is not by origin a Roman Catholic, nor an Anglican, but because these faiths or religions were founded by white men with an idea of their own. In his religious philosophy, the Negro may safely adopt articles of faith to link him to the Godhead of Christian faith and practice such as his particular religion, and so likewise with other institutions. His universities, colleges, and schools may engage in the same process of education, but with an adopted curriculum necessary for the special benefit of the Negro. His clubs, academies, and unions should be
Academy.
model academies and unions should be modeled in the same way with the absolute objective of obtaining the end of this particularly desired that is particularly desired by the race. The Negro should never completely surrender himself to the institutional life of other people. Otherwise, he will not be original, but purely and merely a copyist. If this could be appreciated, it shows or reveals the wide fields which have remained untouched for Negro organization and Negro activity. It is through the institution of a race that civilization and culture of the race are built. The Negro should occupy himself in cultivating his own culture and ultimately achieving his own civilized end, so that in comparison of racial achievements, he may be able to stand out distinctly on those achievements of his own account as others may do. To live on the achievement of others is to really admit the superiority of others and the inferiority of self. Race first, that's good. As a fact, it is by such comparisons that the Negro is judged as an inferior being. Nothing that is handed to the Negro by somebody else should be sufficiently satisfactory to the Negro. He should seek to surround it with originality and then claim it as his own. He is justified in remodeling and reshaping the things to suit himself because there is nothing new under the sun, what other people have. The Negro is the father of civilization. He constructed the first government in Africa and thereby taught others the way. Always seek to improve on whatever you see fit to adopt. Never leave it at where you adopt it because someone else will claim it and prove their right to it. When you have added to it or taken away from it, you can prove that it is not the same thing, therefore, it is yours. Always carefully and thoroughly investigate the accomplishments of other races. Try to improve and beat them at their achievements and keep your achievements a secret from them. Never open up the facts of your achievements to others because they are too anxious to get the last word on anything that is worthwhile. Always hide the secrets of your achievements while demonstrating those achievements. It must be like a chemist selling his preparation or demonstrating it without giving away his formula. Because the moment he does so, there will be many similar preparations on the market. Each institution of a people has its special objects to obtain and may not fit in with the idealism of other people. So the Negro should have his own. He is not to be a slave to other people's idealism. In some detail or other, each people's institutions must differ from yours according to their particular idealism. The Jew could never be a Negro in his institutional line, nor can an Anglo-Saxon a Latin, nor a Latin a Toucan, nor neither a Negro. Therefore, a Negro must not try to be either, but his institutional line by his, line be himself, like the Jew whom nature made a Jew for a particular purpose. Therefore, he must be different both in his habits, in his way of living, and in his idealism. All people have separate and distinct functions, and they should keep those functions. The archangels in heaven have their functions. The cherubims have theirs. The seraphims have theirs.
Cherubims and seraphims.
Seraphims. We have to go over there. I don't even know what that is. Have theirs. And so with humanity, following God and having an example, there is no reason why the Negro should not have his. And when he doesn't, he is not living the proper life in accordance with the purpose in which nature made him. Yes, race first. Your entire phenomenon. Is that right? How you say that, President John?
Physiognomy.
Physiognomy. Yeah, we got to go over the definition of that word too. Is that like your total makeup of who you are when it comes from your DNA and everything else?
Yeah, yes, pretty much. We're gonna look at that when we go over the lesson, but your physical makeup, pretty much.
All right, sounds good. Is different from other people's. Your hair is woolly, your nose is broad, your lips are thick, and so this difference must also be intended in your outlook and in your viewpoint on life. Anyone who tells you the contrary is a liar and a fraud. In fact, the enemy to you and to nature. In this human world of confusion, never let anyone tell you that although of different races, you are one. If you were one, God would have made you so because he is not a deceiver. Race first. Yes. The Ethiopian is spoken of as being different. Even in the scripture, it is said that he cannot change his skin. Think what that means. It is fair assumption that others may change their skins, but not the Ethiopian, who is the Negro, the black man. So there must be something permanent and lasting and external for the black man. God knows why he
That's
fixes
eternal.
it
Eternal.
internal about the black man. God knows why he fixes it so. Don't try to change by the suffrage or
Subterfuge or
subterfuge.
inferential fraud.
Inferential fraud. We gotta go over those words too.
You got it.
Yeah, what a grand thing it is to know that while all other things change, you, because of your race, cannot change. Race first. That's right. That's right. We will always be melanated. Tell this to the world. Tell them how lasting you are. And when they doubt it, send them to their Bibles, which you yourself never wrote. It emphasizes the greater truth that it may be so. Because even those who wish otherwise to have acknowledged in the respect of virtue, the black man evidently was the first man. Adam and Eve were black. Their children, their two children, Cain and Abel, were black. When Cain slew Abel and God appeared to ask him for his brother, he asked him for his brother. He was so shocked that he turned white, being the affliction of leprosy. And as such, he became the progenitor of the new race. That's deep. New race born out of double sin. The white man is Cain, transformed, hence his career of murder from Cain to Mussolini. It is evident and fair assumption that when Cain ran away and disappeared from the neighborhood of his parents and journeyed afar, he built up a new race living in the same country but far away. And in the process of time in Africa, where all this happened, the Negro race, through Adam and Eve, continued their multiplication as to spread itself in the development of civilization. It came suddenly upon the settlement of Cain, and knowing Cain's history of blood ran the entire race from the neighborhood across the Mediterranean into Europe. The white race of Cain hid in caves for centuries. Therefore, their white skin became fixed because most of the time they were hidden from the light. Hence, the white man as the European. Yeah. All right. We only got 2 pages. The world is only a part of the creation, an atom of universe. It is complete entity of creation in the relationship with other entities in creation. Man is made of mind and matter. Matter is manifested through nature. The mind is the connecting link with the Spirit of God. With the Spirit of God. The mind is the connecting link with the Spirit of God. The highest mind is in the world of the mind of man, and that behind it is the Spirit of God, giving the mind free will to act through the soul. The soul is mind, as well as the feeling of heart is soul and mind. The explanation of this is as intricate as that of the Trinity, the God, the Father, God, the Son, God, the Holy Ghost. And you know I have a problem with that Trinity, because to me, it's the black man, the black woman, and the black child. As God rules the universe in all matter and mind, so man through his mind rules the world over which he is Lord. That's right. The world, the whole world then belongs to man. Each man should get his appropriate and proportionate share. When in lifetime he fails to get this, he naturally fails to lift himself up to his lordship. One man's depossession of his lordship enthrones another man's sovereignty over him. Hence, a ruling man and serving man, a ruling race and a serving race. That's right. Never be a race of servers. Huh?
You're doing great. It was the word was dispossession of his lordship.
Dispossession of his lordship. Yes. Never be a race of servers, but a race of sovereigns. Lords control the world because the world is your province. The world will not yield more than you want it to yield. But if you know the world, you can make the world yield much. Whatever you want, always try to master the world. To master the world, you must know the world. Hence, you must pass outside of your own district, country, and country. To know the world, go and possess it. Because all that is in it is yours for getting. Go out and get it. There is no other rival but your fellow man. Never allow your fellow man to rise higher than you. Otherwise, he will make you his slave. Good God. I like that. Never allow your fellow man to rise higher than you. Otherwise, he will make you his slave. If you not use the world well by understanding it, it will destroy you through its matter and through its mind. If you treat the world well by knowing it thoroughly, the world will serve you obediently. Always dispute the right of any other's man's superiority over you in the world. Feel no other man but God, for God is your superior. But man is always your equal. So as long as you rise to his attainments, you may rise to his attainments through the extraordinary use of your mind. Mind is matter. Mind is king. When it goes wrong, it loves its scepter. It remains right and
Loses,
will.
it loses its scepter.
Scepter. Okay. It loses its scepter, and that's kind of like having like a wand or something like that, or where you supposed to be at, like, right? All right.
Scepter would be like a sign of authority.
Sign of authority. All right. It
Rulership.
remains right and wills the scepter and sits upon the throne. Always be on the throne. It is your prerogative. It is your right because you are the Lord and master of the earth and all things therein. And going through the world, hold your head and courage high, for you must always remember that you are a man, the ruler of the world. Remember that you rule the world through your mind. Think high, think deeply, think in a way to make you know all around and about you. If you do not know, you will fail. Be sure to know. Knowledge is everywhere, it is hidden. Search for it. And when you discover it and no one else knows about it, keep it and use it for the good of yourself and for your race. Your first duty in the world is to yourself, your family, your race, and your racial nation. Then worship God absolutely and thank Him for all. If you allow another man to know more than you, he will lead you up to the
Precipice.
precipice. What is it?
Precipice.
Precipice. And if it suits his purposes, he will let you fall in. Therefore, know as much as he does and more, so that he may not lead you blindly. When you have to follow another man because you don't know, you are taking a dangerous risk. He may bury you, he may hide you away to suit his convenience. Therefore, while you walk through the world, always be on guard. Try not to lose your mind. Try not to lose your mental balance. Try not to lose your sense of perception, because in losing these things, you are doomed in the world. There is nothing man cannot know except the divine and almighty mysteries of God. All that is possible to man, man may know by seeking knowledge that is in the world. Always try to be self-sufficient in yourself. Where it is impossible, seek that self-sufficiency in your racial relations, comradeship of your own in your own race. Always see to it that your race is self-sufficient. That means that everything you want must be obtainable in your race as far as human relationships will permit. If you are not individually self-sufficient or cooperative in your racial relations of self-sufficient in your race as a whole, you will have to go outside of yourself for that sufficiency. Race first, that's true too, which will make you absolutely dependent on the goodwill of others for your sufficiency. No one will give away value that is wanted for self. So you will have to serve and become servants or slaves to sufficiency. Never wait on another man's pocketbook. Use your own, because he may never show up. He may die on the way, and you will wait, and your wait will be too long. Race first. That was awesome. Race first, Black Power. Yes.
Very. Thank you, Sister Quet. Excellent job. Um, Purpose of institutions, to be quite clear with everybody. We've gone through half of the text now. You should understand the foundation, intelligence, knowledge, education. That is the key. And Mr. Garvey in this last lesson emphasizes the importance of institutions. We must have places that are organized to do the work, the particular work of the society. So, whatever the needs of our society are, we must have institutions that are constantly training and developing our people to address those needs. So, education, knowledge, intelligence for ourselves primarily, but for our people secondarily, is really the meat and potatoes of what Course of African Philosophy is about. So we will continue. We won't be back. I got to take a week off next week. I got to take care of some business, but we will get back together in February. So week off this week, and that's in the calendar that we've been sending out. I'll pull that up briefly. Message
You
to.
deserve a break, President John. You've been so consistent. Thank you so much, Brother John.
Yeah, I gotta take I'm taking a
You
week.
deserve a break. Sister
And look,
Kat,
Marcus
thank
Garvey
you.
said that means that President John can be trusted, because what did Marcus Garvey say about a person that's consistent?
That's right. That's right. You know, but this is our schedule as we've been walking through. We started October 22nd tonight. Preface, forward, lesson 1, lesson 2, lesson 3, lesson 4. We had a break for the holidays at the end of December. Today is January 21st. We got lesson 12. We'll take a break next week. We'll come back February 4th. I've got lesson 13 and 14. So it looks like we're doing 2 lessons on the 4th, and then we'll continue so forth. Exam will be we got a makeup day, first day of April, and then we'll have exams the following weeks right before High Executive Council. So take next week, take some time to review. If there's any lessons that you're deficient in or need more assistance in, take another week to further review that. I would recommend, as I said, for me, it's foundational. So I start from the beginning, master lesson 1, master lesson 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, work your way up. So I don't have anything else, brothers and sisters. If anybody has anything anybody have anything before we close?
So since we're on this break, I think we should, brothers and sisters, we can get together so we can study and pass this exam.
Yeah.
Yes, please. Yes, please. Let's organize to study together. Yeah, study group.
Yeah, study group.
That's fine.
Yeah, okay. I got your number, Sister Kat. We will organize something and get people together who are interested to study
Sounds
during
good.
this short break. Are you on WhatsApp?
No, I don't even know how to use WhatsApp, and my phone is probably too old to even get it.
Okay, we'll talk off. Okay, over to you, President John. Sorry for the interruption.
No, I was asking any closing comments. I don't have anything else, brothers and sisters. We are supposed to be doing a Constitution program on February 1st. So be on the lookout for promotion for that. But other than that, everybody enjoy yourselves. And we will come back February 4th. And when we come back on the 4th, we're not stopping until we finish the text.
Thank you, President John.
Thank you, Dr. Kuda. This will get us ready for HEC. And we also need to prepare our study of the Constitution. But these 2 books, Message to the People, Course of African Philosophy, for me as an introduction, is the spirit that guides the Constitution. But those 2 texts are what we really must understand and master as we work to rebuild the UNIA-ACL as Mr. Garvey left. That's all I got. We will close out.
A question?
Attorney Motep. I got it for you too, Attorney Motep. Go ahead.
This is Aziza.
Okay.
Just a quick question. Was there any white person that Garvey trusted, or was it that he did not trust no white person?
Well, what you mean? What do you mean trust, sisters? Either not trust to the level of, working with them. I would argue from a diplomatic standpoint, as we've gone through, Mr. Garvey trusted, and not only whites, I would say any other culture, to do what is in the best interest for their culture, and needless to, irregardless of what that meant for our people, I would argue that was Mr. Garvey's trust for others.
Okay.
If I may, President John, of lately I've been watching Cat Williams because he spoke his truth, and as he was on Shay Shay's show, he mentions that oh gosh, the point I wanted to bring across. He mentioned, oh goodness, I'm sorry.
Cat
As
Williams
he was on
mentioned.
Shay Shay's show, the point I want to bring across is about this trust issue. That he mentioned something that oh this anyway. I wanted to compare that with what the Honorable Marcus Garvey did when Cat Williams says he would go to a strip club to go and take that sister out of that strip club. The reason you'll find him in a strip club is because he wants to help that sister who's spinning around that pole and show her that you can do better than that. So what the Honorable Marcus Garvey, when he went to meet with the KKK, it was a diplomatic strategy. I don't know how best to express it, but I kind of also looked into this thoroughly and I examined it because some people were accusing him that you are friends with the KKK. It was very diplomatic. That the man was just too brilliant. He was just intelligent. He's got no hate for nobody. He had no hate for anybody. All he wanted is to see his race progress, be self-sufficient, self-reliant, and be able to do for self. And he made it. And because he made it so successful, he got what happened, to be accused of a petty crime of mail fraud, which was not even, the mail was not even there that they accused him of. So to answer your question, my sister, the issue of trust, his father, he went with his father used to dig graves. The father left him. They went down with a step ladder. The father came up and took the step ladder and left Garvey down there. From there, Garvey said, "You'll never trust anybody." And for sure, there's a level of trust. There's certain things you can trust people to say, "Okay, I trust you. You can do this work. Go ahead and do it." So he was so intelligent, God-gifted intelligence. He knew how to maneuver his way through. That's why they couldn't find nothing wrong on him. They had to accuse him falsely of a false accusation, something that didn't happen. They framed him. A mere letter, a mail that had nothing in it even. That's the only way they could get him because they couldn't find any dirt on him. I don't know if I'm answering you, but his level of trust, there's different levels that you can trust people. You can trust me to a certain extent. You see, the subject tells us trust nobody because we are evil. It's just in us. We do that. We want to compete and things like that. We haven't overcome that as a human race, unfortunately. And the system also brings us to think like that in that narrow channel mind, you know. But it's through these lessons that we can undo that. I can start to trust you like I trust Sister Arquette right now. And I can say to her, I love you. Because there's that level of trust that I want to be happy with her.
Yes.
I want her to be happy and I want to be happy too. That level of trust. So I think Garvey was like that. He loved everybody, black, white, any color. But he knew his levels of how he could interact with all these races. And he knew for what benefit he needed to do that for. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Kuda. Brother Moyama, I see you. Trust, the Garvey's trust for
Yeah,
white.
I don't know. I don't know if the sister was focusing mainly on trust or if it was whether he befriended anyone or not, who was other than a member of the race. But even in that regard, Yeah, I agree. Like I think Brother President John was saying that he trusted particularly white nationalists to be honest about what their intentions were and what trying to do what was best interest of their race.
Hmm?
Now there were some other liberals who were he identified as Greek bearing gifts and who just like the Trojan horse, they give you a gift but it's a trick involved, and so he trusted them a lot less.
Hmm.
But in general, he trusted everybody to follow their best interests.
Hmm.
So he understood people and he knew how to relate to them. And yeah, like with the KKK, he was able to diplomatically disarm them from attacking, the organization because we had some common interests. We didn't want their women any more than we thought they should be after our women. We had interest in returning, many of us home to our motherland, which they were in favor of as well. So, in being diplomatic, you state certain things that are common interest, and you learn to, to respect one another in a different way. So yeah, Mr. Garvey didn't have malice even for the U.S. government. He said, "Our fight isn't with America, but with hypocrisy and lies, and that we'll fight to the bitter end." But he was a very principled man. So yeah, there were some people like Ernest Sevier Cox and others that he would correspond with over the years that showed, that he wasn't hostile toward all people because of race. There were some certain statements he made about, all races having good and bad people, and not selfishly condemning one race or for the benefit of the other, that kind of thing. So, there were some. He was very moral and principled in his position on African nationalism. So, there's a lot to be learned from that or gleaned from that. If you, I don't know, not sure exactly why you were asking about the European, or if he were um, trusting of any European. But anyway, that's my thoughts on that one.
I think us as brothers and sisters, we naturally do not have that malice inside of us. And that has caused us problems um, through history, because we don't have that malice. We were trading, we were doing things too. We sat down at the table and built our treaties and everything else. But I think Marcus Garvey, even through that, broke it down to the point that you trust no one, right? Because the first thing you have to look at is, yourself, you know. And I think that before you can even trust someone else, do you even trust yourself? That's the question that we should be asking. It's not even about a European. It's not even about anybody of another race or brother or sister. The question that should be asked is that, do you trust yourself? And that's an honest question that we need to figure out, that needs to be figured out by the individual. Do we honestly trust ourselves?
Ashe, Ashe. That reminds me of
Okay.
lesson 6, where Garvey talked about the alignment of the free will and the Holy Spirit of God. But are we in alignment, and do we trust ourselves to stay in alignment with our Creator? So, great point, Sister Aquette. All right, brothers and sisters, 10:37. We are an hour late. Brother Malik, my second vice president, would you be able to close us out? Brother Malik, you there? See, this is what Zoom. It looked like everybody just here and working and attentive.
I want to say two brownie points for Dr. Kuda for watching Club Shay Shay.
Yes, yes. Yeah, can't wait.
Sorry, what did you say, President General?
Yeah, I said two cool points to you for watching Club Shay Shay.
Oh, thank you. I just came across him and I'm so interested about this Cat Williams. Thank you. Sorry, President John.
No problem. Brother Moimar, Brother President General, would you do us honor, close us out?
Okay. Any particular closing or just with ritual?
Whatever is on your heart, my brother.
Okay. Well, I like to close out with the chaplain prayer. Not by might, nor by
Not
power,
by might,
Yeah, you don't have to repeat it, but you can, bow or hold your hand over your heart.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, not by might, nor by power, but by my spirit, saith the Lord of hosts. God of the right, our battles fight, be with us as of yore. Break down the barriers of might, we reverently implore. Stand with us in our struggles for the triumph of the right, and spread confusion ever o'er the advocates of might. And let them know that righteousness is mightier than sin, that might is only selfishness and ought not win. Endow us, Lord, with faith and grace and courage to endure the wrongs we suffer here apace, and bless us evermore. One God,
One God,
God,
one
God,
aim,
one
one
aim,
One
aim,
aim,
one destiny.
one
one destiny.
destiny.
Africa for the Africans.
Africa for the
Africa
For the
for the
Africans.
Africans.
Those at home
Those at
Those
home
at home
and those abroad.
And
and
those
those
abroad.
abroad.
Lord.
And from our brother Dr. Shams, up you mighty race, you can accomplish what you will.
Up your
Up your
race,
mighty
Mighty
race, you
race,
can
can
accomplish
And
what
accomplish
you
accomplish
what
what
will.
you
you
accomplish.
will.
will.
Race first, family.
Race
Race
first.